Hey folks, what's going on? This is Mr. Jones. Please excuse me as I'm recording in my kitchen. It is crazy hot outside. Cars are hot. It's hot outside. My thermometer here, this is what I put into the vents of your vehicle. It's reading 108 when in the sun and was reading 95 when out of the sun. So it's really humid out there though. I know that doesn't sound bad, but the humidity is just up there. And I've been in a lot of shops. I've been working, working in the shops, kind of like working outdoors, really. Um, I've been working outdoors for a long time. So I used to work for Coons Chrysler Chevrolet in Tyson's Corner. And when I left, the name had gotten so long. It became Coons Chrysler Chevrolet Pontiac, just Buick. The name was just wrapping around the building. And really all they had to say was GMC, General Motor Cars. Yeah, that would have taken care of a lot of that. So I don't know what the deal was. And then Daimler Chrysler. So Daimler Chrysler, GMC, that would have taken care of all that. But as I go on a rant, I can talk for days. So real quick though, folks, I just wanted to say, this gives you the opportunity, though it's not a full-fledged conversation, you get a chance to see who it is that you're speaking to when it comes to automotive. So let's jump right into an AC clinic. This gives you a chance to see how I operate and do things, even if you're not getting AC. If you're getting something different, this will still allow you to kind of see how I operate versus what other competition might be out there. So, like I said, I used to work for a dealership years ago. Now I work for myself from home. I still have all my tools and equipment. Now, when I do an AC clinic, I charge $150 for an AC clinic. That includes me checking the system out, making sure that there's no major leaks, making sure the system is going to hold the stuff that I put into it. Okay, if it's got a big gaping leak, that's not going to fly. All right, and so it's important that I test for these things. So the first thing that my number one thing that I use is these AC gauges here. I hook the AC gauges up so I know what's going on in your low pressure line and your high pressure line. So your low being the blue, and I want to see the blue at about 30 or 40. Okay, she's got a little bit of refrigerant in there, a little bit of trapped refrigerant, so that's why the needle's not at 0. So if I can get this guy at 30 or 40, the blue, and if I can get this red creeping up to about 200, and really it depends on the humidity and how hot it is outside. All of that is actually relative here. But that's okay because those numbers are pretty general. If you can do that, your AC is blowing cold, okay? So I use this to check the system so I can see what's going on in your system. No guesswork, right? I need to see what's going on. Is the compressor kicking on? Is there pressure? Will it hold pressure? Are the highs and lows where they need to be? And I use this to put a vacuum in the system as well. And I'll pull out my vacuum pump here. I don't want that to drop. So here's my vacuum pump here. And I'll let this run for like an hour or two. And what it'll do is it's going to pull as much moisture as it can out of that system. Moisture is not good for a system because the system can't operate well with the moisture in the system. So we pull a vacuum to boil the moisture out of the system. The moisture starts to boil around like room temperature when you have a vacuum like that on it. So that's pretty nice. Also, moisture mixed with your refrigerant that's in your system turns into an acid, and then it starts to eat the aluminum parts inside the system. So, if somebody can afford an accumulator, if I see that there's some moisture in the system and they can afford an accumulator, I'll say, hey, I can get this cold, but I would suggest an accumulator, and this is why. Because the accumulator or the receiver dryer, these two items, depending on which one your car has, they're going to have the moisture in those particular areas. So if you get a new one, then that system's already doing better. And by the way, how do you know when you're done with your job, right? You've recovered the system, you've done the vacuum, you've made sure there's no big leaks. Now the system's blowing cold. Well, what I do is I use a temperature gauge, right? I use a temperature gauge. Well, you can't really see very well, I'm sorry. But you'll see some green there. And in the green, that's about 40 degrees. I want about 40 or 45 degrees. Those are my goals, okay? is to get them to about there. Different cars are different, but about that's my goal. I need to know that when I put my hand there, I'm aware that it's cold, but I need the evidence that it's as cold as I want it. Okay, and when I say I want to do a good job. If I notice I can't get it that cold, well then there more moisture in the system? What's going on? I got to figure out what's going on. So I have parameters for every little thing. Okay, there's that. Also, um, one thing I really want to talk about, let's talk about this, is often when people say that their AC is not working, most people think that their compressor is broken, which isn't the case a lot of times, and is the case a lot of times. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But just know when your AC is not working, it will automatically shut the compressor off if parameters are not met. If the low pressure is too low, the high pressure is too high, um, if it's too cold outside, there's multiple switches that turn the compressor off. So just because it's off doesn't mean it's broken. I've seen a lot of compressors sold, and I'm not happy about that. As technicians or mechanics working on a vehicle, it's important that we try our best to be perfectionists, okay? And really try and perfect the art, the craft that we're doing, so that we can continuously have vehicles coming around. No one wants comebacks coming back. None of that. That's not. We didn't like that in the shop. Your name doesn't look good if you keep getting comebacks. Like, hey man, I thought you fixed this. It comes back for the same thing. That's what we're calling comebacks. Not cool. So when I'm doing my AC clinic, I'm really checking certain things out to make sure, like, hey, this AC is gonna hold for the rest of the summer, right, or the rest of the year. Um, so yeah, that's why I do, I check it with a vacuum, and I check where my gauges are, and I make sure that the needles don't move. One, I draw a vacuum on the system and turn that pump off. If the needles don't move and wander, we know we got a pretty decent system. It could have a little bit of a leak in it, and it will. Because why in the first place does it not have a refrigerant in it, right? Refrigerant doesn't just, break down and disappear. No, it leaked out somewhere. But, some systems really test out well. The leak is that tiny. So, that's very interesting. Um, so I just wanted to mention a few things on that. So when I said the compressor may or may not turn on because the computer's telling it not to turn on, I use a voltmeter to check certain things out, to check and see if the compressors itself is it working? Is it actually getting a signal? So when I hit that button, is that button giving a signal to the compressor? If not, do we have a relay problem? Do we have a fuse problem? What's going on? Or is the compressor itself actually bad? And by the way, one thing that I do notice is that not everyone puts oil in their system. I put it like, if I see your system, it's your AC's not working. It used to work kind of recently. I'll put like an ounce of PAG oil. This is PAG 100. You can get 100. You can get 46. It depends on what your compressor's asking for, or you can get PAG oil that's got the dye in it. So if I'm looking for a leak, I can put this oil in the system, and when it goes around in inside the system, and we can see where it's leaking out because it's going to be bright green with my special flashlight, it makes things a lot easier. But just know your compressor, like your car needs oil, and the compressor, the AC system, actually has its own oil. A lot of people don't know that. But if you don't put any oil in there and say it's actually low on oil, well then who knows how long your compressor is going to last. Maybe in the future, months later, it's going to die, or days later, or it just depends. But I always make sure that there's oil in my system. Now, when I add refrigerant, as you can see, I got a can tap here. It connects to my gauges, and I'm able to actually gauge and see how much is going in the system and where the pressures are. I let this in slowly. I don't just let it empty itself out. I really pay attention, and I'm looking for those sweet spots of where I know my gauges need to be. Okay, so that's really important. So AC work, it's very interesting. It's not the easiest, and it's something that can be very much be time consuming. But I decided to speak about AC because it's so hot out, and I know a lot of people are going to have some AC issues. So maybe this might help some people out, in finding or choosing the correct person to drop their car off for AC, or maybe you drop it off with me for a AC clinic. And by the way, if I don't fix your AC, then I'm not going to be charging you $150, okay? This AC clinic's like, hey, it looks like I can help you, I'll help you. If I get it blown cold like I want it to, then you're good, okay? So thank you very much for visiting, folks. Those who see this video, you got my, call, text, what have you. If I don't answer, I'll get to you as soon as my hands are clean. You know how it is. Thank you very much. This is Mr. Jones. I hope to hear from some of you real soon.